Chapter 20. It's not a mummy, I told myself. It can't be. It's a bug. A very large bug. Moving across the coffin floor. It's not a mummy. It's not a mummy. The words repeated in my mind. I didn't have too long to think about it. Whatever it was, crept closer. "Hey!" a voice whispered. Sari and I both shrieked. "Where are you guys?" We recognized the voice immediately. "Uncle Ben!" I cried, swallowing hard, my heart pounding. "Daddy!" Sari lunged over me to get to her father. "But how?" I stammered. "How did you get in here?" "Easy," he replied, squeezing my shoulder reassuringly. "Daddy, I don't believe it!" Sari wailed. I couldn't see in the blackness of the closed coffin, but I think she was crying. I'm okay, he repeated several times, trying to calm her down. "How did you get out of that case and into this one?" I asked, totally confused and amazed. "There's an escape hatch," Uncle Ben explained. "A small opening with a doorway. The Egyptians built hidden doorways and escape hatches into many of their mummy cases, for the corpse's soul to be able to leave." "Wow," I said. I didn't know what to say. "Ahmed is so caught up in his ancient curse mumbo-jumbo, he's forgotten about this little detail," Uncle Ben said. I felt his hand on my shoulder again. "Come on, you two. Follow me." "But he's out there," I started. "No," Uncle Ben replied quickly. "He slipped away. When I climbed out of my case, I looked for him. I didn't see him anywhere. Maybe he went somewhere else while he's waiting for the tar to get hot enough. Or maybe he's decided to just leave us in the mummy cases to suffocate." I felt a bug slither up my leg. I slapped at it, then tried to pull it out from inside the leg of my jeans. "Out we go," Uncle Ben said. I heard him groan as he turned in the enormous coffin. Then I could hear him crawling to the back. I saw a small rectangle of light as he pushed open the hidden door in the back of the case. It was a very small escape hatch, just big enough for us to squeeze through. I followed Uncle Ben and Sari out of the case, flattening myself to crawl out of the small opening, then dropping onto all fours of the chamber floor. It took a while for my eyes to adjust to the brightness. The red flames still danced over the pit of bubbling tar, casting eerie blue shadows on all four chamber walls. The mummies stood as before, frozen in place around the room, shadows flickering over their faceless forms. As my eyes began to focus, I saw that Uncle Ben had an enormous, dark bruise on the side of his head. A wide ribbon of dried blood streaked down his cheek. "Let's get out of here before Ahmed comes back," he whispered, standing between us, one hand on each of our shoulders. Sari looked pale and trembly. Her lower lip was bleeding from her chewing on it so hard. Uncle Ben started toward the rope ladder in the center of the chamber, but then stopped. "It'll take too long," he said, thinking out loud. "Come on, to the tunnel! Hurry!" All three of us started jogging toward the tunnel in the corner. Looking down, I saw that my stupid shoelace had come untied again, but there was no way I was going to stop to tie it. We were about to get out of there. A few seconds before I had given up on all hope. But now, here we were, out of the mummy case and heading for freedom. We were just a few yards in front of the tunnel entrance when the tunnel suddenly filled with orange light. Then, from out of the tunnel, Ahmed emerged, holding a new torch in front of him, the flames revealing a startled look on his face. "No!" Sari and I cried in unison. All three of us skidded to a halt, right in front of him. "You cannot escape," Ahmed said softly, quickly regaining his composure. His startled expression tightening to anger. "You will not escape!" He thrust the torch towards Uncle Ben, who was forced to fall backwards out of reach of the hissing flames. He landed hard on his elbows and cried out in pain. His cry brought a grim smile to Ahmed's lips. "You have made Kala angry," he announced, raising the torch above his head and reaching for the dagger sheathed at his waist. "You will not join the other violators of this chamber." Phew! I breathed a sigh of relief. Ahmed had changed his mind. He wasn't going to turn us into mummies after all. "The three of you will die in the tar pit," he declared. Sari and I exchanged horrified glances. Uncle Ben had climbed back to his feet and put his arms around us. "Ahmed, can't we talk about this calmly and rationally as scientists?" he asked. "To the tar pit," Ahmed ordered, thrusting the flaming torch angrily at us. "Ahmed, please," Uncle Ben cried in a whining, frightened tone. I'd never heard from him before. Ahmed ignored Uncle Ben's desperate pleas, pushing the torch at our backs and gesturing with the long-bladed dagger. He forced us to make our way to the edge of the pit. The tar was bubbling noisily now, making ugly popping and sucking sounds. The flames across the top were low and red. I tried to pull back. It smelled so bad, and the steam coming off it was so hot it made my face burn. One by one you will jump, Ahmed said. He was standing a few feet behind us as we stared down into the bubbling tar. If you don't jump, I will be forced to push you. Ahmed, Uncle Ben began, but Ahmed brushed the torch against Ben's back. It has come to me, Ahmed said solemnly. The honor of carrying out Kala's wishes. The tar fumes were so overwhelming I thought I was going to faint. The pit started to tilt in front of me. I felt very dizzy. I shoved my hands into my jeans pockets to steady myself, I guess, and my hand closed around something I'd forgotten about. The summoner. The mummy hand that I carried around everywhere. I'm not sure why. I wasn't thinking clearly, if at all. But I pulled out the little mummy's hand. I spun around quickly, and I held the mummy hand up high. I can't really explain what was going through my mind. I was so terrified, so overwhelmed with fear that I was thinking 100 things at once. Maybe I thought the mummy hand would distract Ahmed, or interest him, or confuse him, or frighten him. Maybe I was just stalling for time, or maybe I was unconsciously remembering the legend behind the hand that the kid at the garage sale had told me. The legend of why it was called the Summoner, how it was used to call up ancient souls and spirits. Or maybe I wasn't thinking at all. But I spun around and, gripping it by its slender wrist, held the mummy hand up high and waited. Ahmed stared at it, but nothing happened. Chapter 21. I waited, standing there like the Statue of Liberty with the little hand raised high above my head. It seemed as if I were standing like that for hours. Sarah and Uncle Ben stared at the hand. Lowering the torch a few inches, Ahmed squinted at the mummy hand. Then his eyes grew wider, and his mouth dropped open in surprise. He cried out. I couldn't understand what he was saying. The words were in a language I'd never heard. Ancient Egyptian, maybe? He took a step back, his surprised expression quickly replaced by a wide-eyed look of fear. The hand of the priestess! He cried. At least that's what I think he cried, because I was suddenly distracted by what was going on behind him. Sari uttered a low cry. All three of us stared over Ahmed's shoulder in disbelief. A mummy, propped against the wall, appeared to lean forward. Another mummy, lying on his back, slowly sat up, creaking as it raised itself. No! I cried, still holding the mummy hand high. Sari and Uncle Ben were gaping wide-eyed as the vast chamber filled with motion. As the mummies creaked and groaned to life, the air filled with the odor of ancient dust, of decay. In the shadowy light, I saw one mummy, then another straighten up, stand tall. They stretched their bandaged arms above their featureless heads. Slowly, painfully, staggering, moving stiffly, the mummies lumbered forward. I watched, frozen in amazement, as they clambered out of the mummy cases, raised themselves from the floor, leaned forward, took their first slow, heavy steps, their muscles groaning, dust rising up from their dry, dead bodies. They're dead, I thought. All of them. Dead. Dead for so many years. But now they were rising up, climbing from their ancient coffins, struggling toward us on their heavy, dead legs, their bandaged feet scraping across the chamber floor as they gathered in a group. Scrape. 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 A dry, shuffling sound I knew I'd never forget. Scrape. Scrape. The faceless army approached, bandaged arms outstretched. They lumbered toward us, creaking and groaning, moaning softly with ancient pain. Ahmed caught the astonishment on our faces and spun around. He cried out again in that strange language as he saw the mummies advance on us, scraping so softly, so deliberately across the chamber floor. And then, with a furious scream, Ahmed heaved the torch at the mummy in the lead. The torch hit the mummy in the chest and it bounced to the floor. Flames burst from the mummy's chest immediately, spreading over the arms and down the legs. But the mummy kept advancing, didn't slow, didn't react at all to the fire that was so quickly consuming it. Gaping in open-mouthed horror, babbling an endless stream of words in that mysterious language, Ahmed tried to run, but he was too late. The burning mummy lunged at him. The ancient figure caught Ahmed up by the throat, lifted him high above its flaming shoulders. Ahmed uttered a high-pitched shriek of terror as the other mummies lumbered toward, moaning and wailing through their yellowed bandages. They moved in to help their burning colleague. They raised Ahmed high above their moaning heads, and then held him over the burning tar pit. Squirming and kicking, Ahmed uttered a piercing scream as they held him over the boiling, bubbling, steaming tar. I closed my eyes. The heat and tar fumes swirled around me. I felt as if I were being swallowed up, pulled down into the steaming blackness. When I opened my eyes, I saw Ahmed fleeing to the tunnel, staggering, clumsily, shrieking in open-mouthed terror as he ran. The mummies remained by the pit, enjoying their victory. I realized I was still holding the mummy hand over my head. I lowered it slowly and gazed at Sari and Uncle Ben. They were standing beside me, their faces filled with confusion and relief. "The mummies," I managed to utter. "Look," Sari said, pointing. I followed the direction of her gaze. The mummies were all back in place. Some were leaning, some propped at odd angles, some lying down. They were exactly as they had been when I entered the chamber. Huh? My eyes darted rapidly around the room. Had they all moved? Had they raised themselves, stood up, and staggered toward us? Or had we imagined it all? No, we couldn't have imagined it. Ahmed was gone. We were safe. "We're okay," Uncle Ben said gratefully, throwing his arms around Sari and me. "We're okay. We're okay." "We can go now," Sari cried happily, hugging her dad. Then she turned to me. "You saved our lives," she said. She had to choke out the words, but she said them. Then Uncle Ben turned his gaze on me and the object I still gripped tightly in front of me. "Thanks for the helping hand," Uncle Ben said. We had an enormous dinner at a restaurant back in Cairo. It's a miracle any of us got any food down, since we were all talking at once, chattering excitedly, reliving our adventure, trying to make sense of it all. I was spinning the summoner around on the table. Uncle Ben grinned at me. I had no idea how special that mummy hand was. He took it from me and examined it closely. "Better not play with it," he said seriously. "We must treat it carefully." He shook his head. "Some great scientist I am," he exclaimed scornfully. "When I saw it, I thought it was just a toy, some kind of reproduction. But this hand may be my biggest discovery of all." "It's my good luck charm," I said, handling it gently as I took it back. "You can say that again," Sari said appreciatively. The nicest thing she'd ever said to me. Back at the hotel, I surprised myself by falling asleep instantly. I thought I'd be up for hours thinking about all that had happened, but I guess all the excitement had exhausted me. The next morning, Sari, Uncle Ben, and I had a big breakfast in the room. I had a plate of scrambled eggs and a bowl of Frosted Flakes. As I ate, I fiddled with the little mummy hand. All three of us were feeling good, happy that our frightening adventure was over. We were kidding around, teasing each other, laughing a lot. After I finished my cereal, I raised the little mummy hand high. "Oh, summoner," I chanted in a deep voice, "I summon the ancient spirits. Come alive! Come alive again!" "Stop it, Gabe," Sari snapped. She grabbed for the hand, but I swung it out of her reach. "That isn't funny," she said. "You shouldn't fool around like that." "Are you chicken?" I asked, laughing at her. I could see that she was really frightened, which made me enjoy the little joke even more. Keeping it away from her, I raised the hand high. "I summon the ancient spirits of the dead," I chanted. "Come to me! Come to me now!" And there was a loud knock on the door. All three of us gasped. Uncle Ben knocked over his juice glass. It clattered onto the table and spilled. I froze with the little hand in the air. Another loud knock. We heard a scrabbling at the door, the sound of ancient bandaged fingers struggling with the lock. Sari and I exchanged horrified glances. I slowly lowered the hand as the door swung open. Two shadowy figures lumbered into the room. "Mom and Dad!" I cried. I'll bet they were surprised at how glad I was to see them. The end.